Call to order, please, and roll call.
Adam Chuck.
Here.
Rick.
Here.
Perpula.
Here.
Houlihan.
Here.
Middleton.
Here.
Swice. Here.
Here. All right, please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. To the agenda. All right. Recognitions and celebrations.
None this month, but we'll have a couple for board members at the April.
All right, very good. Is Kyle or somebody doing the AFT report?
Yes, let's see. I'm assuming it's Kyle. Oh, somebody got their hand up. Let's see. It is Kyle.
All right.
Sorry about that. And there he is.
Good evening, everybody. It's been quite a few weeks. One consistent this year is change, and nothing slow but rapid, and a lot of time and a lot of thought going into it. I know we're looking to do some changes coming up real quick. I know the administration and the union side have put a lot of thought, a lot of energy into making it the smoothest transition we can make it. And our whole goal is to make sure that everybody's safe, that all of our students are actually actively engaged in authentic learning, and breaks and times, and the whole day is equitable for all the union members and the students. That we'll look forward to see what happens tonight. And I know that each of the schools and the principals will work together to hash out any scheduling faux pas, mistakes, things that need to be corrected. We have a couple more months left of the school year, and it's going to be a good one. And hopefully the weather stays good, so we can use you outside as much as possible. Thank you. That's all I have for tonight.
Excellent. Thank you.
You bet.
All right. Public comments. A designated portion of the board meeting is set aside to hear comments on topics listed on the agenda. A person wishing to speak must sign in and provide all information requested on the sign-in sheet, including the agenda item they will be addressing. The board president will call speakers by name, announcing their time to comment. A time limit of 5 minutes per speaker per agenda topic will be imposed. The purpose of requesting such information on the sign-in sheet is to obtain the correct spelling of the name of the speaker and contact information, which will be used for any necessary board follow-up. All right, we have two people who have want to speak tonight. First, Courtney, we met.
Here she comes. There she is. Courtney, can you try to talk? Make sure we can hear you. Looks like you're muted. There you go.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, good evening. Tonight I am addressing the board on behalf of most remote families that I have spoken with. I know that several people are excited to hear the plans for a full day return to learning. And while I understand the frustrations with this school year and how incredibly difficult it has been for our students, families, and teachers, I am not in favor of this plan for the remote learners. First, quite honestly, we keep hearing how transparent plans have been to the community. Yet every time a change is proposed, it throws us a curveball that we were not expecting. The transparency idea sounds nice, but it has become nothing more than fluff at this time. At the beginning of this school year, we were asked to choose a plan that works for us and commit to the plan for the year. However, the same commitment has not been given to the remote learners. We chose this remote plan based completely on the options presented to us, never once being told the remote learning hours would change. Now we've made it to March and spring break is upon us. Then it's smooth sailing to summer. To change plans at this point seems like an incredible waste of time, and time is something we have not offered our teachers this year. The remote teachers have had to play catch up and be on their toes every step of the way. This is a tough task for anybody, but it's made worse when their jobs have become under public scrutiny, and they are ridiculed for every move they make. We are so quick to judge the teachers for making our kids fall behind some imaginary line that society has placed on us. But when we take the time to listen to the teachers that are with our kids day in and day out, we will learn that they feel the remote students are exactly where they need to be, and our teachers are at a breaking point. They deserve to be heard without bias or judgment. I am also against a change to full remote days at this point because it's highly disruptive to the student schedules that have already been inconsistent with teacher and schedule changes. The logistics of moving around schedules, especially for the children receiving extra services that rely on dependability and routines, seems like a nightmare. I have heard so much preaching on the need for SEL, yet I have not seen much action coming from the district regarding this matter, and it's been another thing that has fallen on the teachers' plates. I brought this point up before in a parent committee meeting and was asked exactly what I think we should be doing at this time. Quite frankly, I'm not the one with the education, skills, or the salary to make that decision. However, I do know that the inconsistencies of this school year have been damaging to the SEL model that has been preached to us since this global pandemic began. If SEL is the top priority, then I urge you not to make any more changes to the remote students for this school year. Also, according to the survey results released to parents, 74 remote families participated and 26% asked for a full day. More importantly, an overwhelming 74% of remote families do not want this change. We have no problems with what the in-person learners are requesting. However, the remote learners have had a consistent flow of learning this year without any quarantine time or switching back and forth between learning models. We deserve for our voices to finally be heard. While I understand that no extension to the remote day is a tall order, I at least want the board to consider the idea that remote learning does not have to mirror in-person learning. We do not need multiple mask breaks. We don't need whole class bathroom breaks. We don't need 20 minutes of bus loading at the end of the day. We don't need recess. We already have movement breaks built into our day. There was once a time not that long ago that this entire board, this entire community, and this entire administration team was concerned for the excessive screen time requirements. It has become apparent that this is no longer an issue considered for the remote students, or simply we're just an afterthought in this plan. So as a full remote parent of 2 young children that have chosen this sacrifice, a sacrifice that helps to even make these in-person guidelines possible, I ask that you consider returning the favor by not extending the remote learners' day to the full 2:30 or 3:30 timeframe. By now, we have secured our childcare, we finalized our schedules, we established our routines, we have made this work. Another large change, although beneficial to our in-person learners, will have a drastic negative impact on the 263 remote learners that were once promised an equitable and consistent education. To continue with the narrative that in-person learning is the best option only continues to diminish the success that the remote students have had this year. I urge the board to continue shifting focus to what the next school year will look like while just letting this year see itself out. Thank you for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you. And then Ms. Gregleck.
Okay, Magdalena, you should be coming up. There she is.
Hello?
Yes,
Oh, hi.
good evening.
All right,
Hi, can you guys hear me at all?
yeah, you're
Perfect.
perfect.
Okay, because I can't hear you for whatever reason.
You-
I don't know why, but if you can hear me okay, then I'm gonna start real quick. First of all, thank you for letting me speak. Thank you for your time and consideration of my comments. First of all, I would like to thank everybody, the administration, all the teachers, the board members, all the support staff. I know you guys put in a lot of long hours and hard work into making all this happen, So I'm really appreciative of all the hard work that goes in, every day, especially this year, given all the circumstances that we had to deal with. I feel that we have come a long way since March 16th, 2020, regarding our knowledge of COVID-19, the risks associated with COVID-19 for the different age groups. We have treatment options, we have vaccines now, and I also feel we have learned quite a bit regarding the negative impacts of remote learning on most students. I'm not saying all, most students. Recently, we have also received some guidelines from IDPH to be able to provide full 5-day in-person learning. And of course, with safety protocols in place for students and teachers. Recently, last week, we had a D92 parent survey, and as I understand, most parents clearly expressed their desire to return to a full 5-day in-person learning. And as I understand, this new plan, the full 5-day in-person learning plan, will be discussed later today at the meeting for kindergarten through 8th grade. So my plea is I urge the board to vote yes to the proposed full day in-person learning of course, for students who are currently in hybrid learning. And I know you understand my position in this situation, and I strongly believe the parents' needs as well as the teachers should be considered when voting on this issue. And I believe, us, the parents, know what's really the best for our kids. We know our situation, and we can. I would like to be given that choice, which seems to work for most kids, which is in-person learning, full days, 5 days a week. That's all I had to say. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, administrative reports, Dr. Arnold.
Okay, I really have two parts of the report. First of all, and I can pull up and project here. Okay, so for the report, two real parts. The first part, just a reminder, we like to keep the strategic plan front and center, so that's at the top. I won't go into that. And then we have a district leadership team report out. I know it's there in writing, so I'll give some highlights. We do want to set up a process where over time, we're having more and more members of the different district committees report out, not just myself. And so tonight we do have one of our teachers, Elise Kohler, who has two topics she's going to report out from the meeting. But just the highlights, and I can certainly circle back just so you know what the district leadership team has been working on. First of all, through a bargaining process, we've been working with teachers on creating the ideal school day, looking ahead to next year, and how to rearrange planning time and specials that benefit students and give the right amount of planning time for teachers. So the district leadership team got a little bit of a heads up on that. That's more of a negotiation thing. And then the district leadership team also looked at the plans we had at the time for a parent university on professional learning communities. And that did happen on March 9th, and there's information later in the presentation about that. There's a hyperlink if any parents want to watch the parent university and did get a chance to on March 9th. Staffing needs. The board tonight is recommending we take action on the staffing plan for next year. So the district leadership team talked about the multi-year plan to more align our hiring or our staffing with the evidence-based funding model. So you will see that reflected in this year's, primarily in this year's numbers at K1, 2, and 3. Let's see. Identifying professional need, and this is an important function of the district leadership team. And I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Kohler for that report.
Hi. So one function of the DLT is to plan, to organize, and provide structure for professional development. And the days are based off of our District 92 strategic priorities and then the feedback that we get from the other schools. Our next Institute Day is going to be May 15th. And at our last DLT meeting, we had a really great discussion about this. The admin teams presented a few topics that they thought were going to be important that we needed some professional development on. And as a DLT team, we discuss, like, we really think it's important to discuss vertical and horizontal articulation. So based upon those discussions and all the stakeholders that are involved in the DLT, we adjusted our plans. And I think that, it was great that we could have that discussion. So moving forward, our goal is that by this June, we will be able to have the plan for next year and all of our institute days.
All right, any questions? Thank you, Ms. Kohler.
Thank you.
I was hoping you guys would ask her a tough question. Too easy. This has come up, if anyone's been listening to some of our board conversations since at least November, if not before, during this pandemic, when it comes to student data, we've said time and time again that we fully expect, and it is bearing out, that this year is going to be a year for setting baselines. We can't assume that we're going to use the same trends in standardized tests or other assessments we've been using. We know that there's going to be some impact on the learning models we've used during a pandemic. So the district leadership team took some time to think about that, talk about that, and just reinforce it. Of course, we will use those new baselines as we're setting new learning targets and achievement targets for the next 2 or 3 school years. The goal is to continuously improve. And Mrs. Kohler has the next one on District 92 SEL SMART Goal Progress Report from the schools.
So all of our District 92 schools have had a focus on SEL competencies for the adults, and we're using something called the Castle rubric to guide us and to create our goals. Our goal this year was to increase our district-wide cumulative rating by 39 points, as you can see up there. And this is to be done by June. So during our DLT meeting, the admins reported out that all schools are on target to, on track to meet this target, which is great. So we decided to, after looking at the data, that next year our goal, we need to focus on cultural responsiveness in order to make the proper progress in the Castle rubric.
All right, any questions about that? Thank you, Ms. Kohler. And also just the final piece of what the district leadership team does, we started to discuss strategic priorities for next year. So the past 2 years, as we work through the strategic planning process, I've proposed strategic priorities to the board, and I will continue to do that. The difference is the district leadership team will have a significant role in helping me develop those before I recommend those. So it's one thing for a superintendent to do that. It's much more of a quality process if we can get all the school leadership teams or the building leadership teams involved in that process. And we use some pretty good feedback loops to inform the DLT's work. So when I come back in June, July, or August with next year's strategic priorities, they'll be from the group, not just from myself. So, any questions about district leadership team? That was just a report out. Okay, thank you, Ms. Kohler. We'll take you off the hot seat. And just a reminder that we are planning to put time for professional learning communities into the school year next year. We're actually doing that in conjunction with how we're setting up the schedule for April and May. And we'll talk about that more throughout the meeting, but I just wanted to call that out. And then I do have a presentation. Stop that. About our learning models. Okay. As always, this could be lengthy. I'll be happy to circle back and answer questions, but I'll click through unless there are questions. We always like to start every presentation with a circle back to our mission, empowering each student to develop a love of learning in an evolving global society. Our motto, which has now been integrated to all of our logos, is inspire, engage, and innovate. We do have a vision. I won't read through all the vision statements of what we commit to providing our students, and then what we value. Okay, let's talk about learning models. Why change learning models now? There's 3 reasons why we're talking tonight about changing the learning model. First of all, our trends are moving in the right direction, both in D92, they've been pretty stable and positive all year. And in our local community in Lockport, Homewood Glen, we do watch the county. That matters, but it matters more what happens in our own community. So that's number one. Why else? Because at this point, or as of our target date, April 6th, all D92 staff will have had the opportunity to be fully vaccinated, both shots fully in effect. That doesn't mean that every staff member has chosen to. We certainly have not required that, but ample opportunity for every staff member to be fully vaccinated prior to April 6th. And then last and certainly not least, the game changer last week was Illinois Department of Public Health guidance was updated, and two of the most significant pieces of that were adding flexibility to the 3 to 6 foot distance, and then removing that 50-person limit, which really hurt when you're trying to do lunch. So we still maintain 6 feet in those settings like the lunchroom, but we can fit more than 50 students in our lunchrooms when we are 6 feet apart. Those are why we're looking at the changes. What are we looking to change? Well, we're looking at an in-person model, and I'm recommending that we move to a kindergarten through 8th grade return to full day in-person learning on April 6th. Of course, we've never walked away from our remote learning model, and I recommend that we continue the full remote learning option through the end of the year, which is right now scheduled to be June 4th. We're not looking to make really any changes to that model, and I'll talk about that more throughout the presentation. Just a quick review of the timeline. It's been 1 year. It was March 16th, Monday, March 16th, 2020, when our students did not come to school as planned, and we began this journey. I didn't plan it to be tonight, but it's been a year. So obviously we were on remote learning for the rest of last year. We started last year remote learning, or we started this year remote learning for all students, August 27th to September 29th. I've got some charts that'll walk through this a little bit more. We moved into hybrid, that lasted about 2 weeks. And then we've been on remote October 15th through January 19th, we came back to a hybrid learning model. 2 key pivots for us. February 4th through March 13th, our staff was getting their first and second vaccinations. That was when we really started to look at what the end of the year could look like when we knew our shots were going into our staff's arms. And so as that was happening on February 25th, I announced plans to extend in-person learning for K-5 because at the time we still had the restrictions from IDPH. However, the next bold highlighted is that last week we found out that they were going to loosen the restrictions, which made it possible to also bring back full in-person to junior high. It's been a whirlwind of a week, to say the least. Tonight, I'm proposing full day schedules, which we're talking about, and then we are planning on implementing full day in-person learning April 6th through June 4th, if the board approves it. Let's just look at some metrics. This is more of the why. These are our county metrics, and you can see the 4 areas. What we're noticing in the state, and the state seems pretty relaxed with it, the governor today is starting to talk about phase 5. And the narrative I'm hearing is that we've plateaued as a state at the cases that we're at. And I don't know that it's going to get much lower, but they're going to work within that. So that's why you see 3 of the 4 indicators being minimal, and 1 just not quite getting below that $100,000 of case, 100,000 of cases. And now, once again, that's county-wide data. Okay, let's look at the picture. I think it's important to see how the decision-making has gone throughout the year. It's easy at the time to say, change and change and change. But let's look at the data that we've been looking at throughout the year. This is our past year, Will County data, cases per 1,000 as of today. But you got to kind of look at this section right here to see where we started the year. Look at where our minds were, all the discussion we had with how we're making decisions about return to school. Wouldn't we love those numbers that we had back in August, okay? And we didn't, who would know that we were going to have what we had ahead of us? So if you look to the bottom left, you see that looked kind of scary, but looking back, armchair quarterback, that was a blip that we were just getting into. I think it's important to have that perspective. Same idea for the next slide. This is our positivity rate for Will County. And once again, if you look at when we were making decisions about how to start the school in the school year in August, we were getting nervous because we were just getting over that positivity rate threshold. And we dipped back down, and then obviously throughout the winter we went back up. So looking at the trend at the time back in August, who knew what was going to happen? And we'd had that dip in October, which happened to be when we came back, and then we didn't. So let's look at some decision points throughout the year. We already talked about, we started the year remote. That went from August 27th to September 29th. Who knew what was coming ahead, but we tried hybrid, and then we shut it down in 2 weeks. And now looking back, seems like a pretty darn good decision. To go much longer with the hybrid model, the numbers were not looking very good. We had a longest period with October 16th to January 18th with all of that you see. And then we made a decision to come back January 19th with the hybrid model, and that worked out pretty well. Things kind of played out the way we thought it could and hoped it would. And last but not least, we are planning on, after April 5th, extending that to full in person. Stop me if you have questions. Now this is, I like this chart. This is more recent. This isn't the whole year. This is only this spring semester since winter, since January 13th. And this is our local, this is the closest we can get without using our only school data. This is the positivity rate. And you can see that when we started this, we were in remote. The numbers that was all in the red. The numbers came down to yellow as we were moving into hybrid. We've been in hybrid in this kind of fluctuation in the yellow zone. And if you look on February 25th, when we announced, okay, we've got shots in arms and we're going to start looking at coming back, that's the first window that we were getting into the green. So if you ask, why are we making the decisions when we're making them? It's because we watch the trends all the time, every day. So when we see things coming together, then we take advantage of it to bring our students back safely. And go ahead. Yes.
Can I just ask, so, I mean, the previous slide and this slide, I mean, looking at it, and I think you just mentioned, so you've been following it daily, you know, numbers and that, and, you know, we can see that, you know, when we were at the peak, we were remote.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess I'm hearing this a lot. I mean, I think one of the parents, you know, who spoke about, you know, the remote learning students, and then, I mean, I heard it within the community. I heard from, you know, the high school, you know, oh my gosh, another change. So, I mean, can you guide and answer that, you know, because I mean, whether I'm seeing it on social media or, you know, I hear, you know, people say to me, you know, how many times are we going to change in that? But I mean, in looking at your slides, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you made the change based on what was happening, the numbers. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I put these together this way. I think it really illustrates that I've personally never been shy about stating that as much in person as we can get, we're going to get, and we're only going to do it safely. And think of each one of us, what we knew about what we were going through back in July of last year, March of last year, September of last year. We just see things differently. The guidance is changing. So it's not just our trend numbers, it's also we learn more about how to do these things better, what's safe and what's not. What we also have the benefit of today, our school districts that I've been in contact with that have eaten lunch throughout the year, that have not gone remote. And what we know today that no one could have known back then, and it seems illogical, is that schools are not where the transmission has happened. And the evidence that we have recently, even with our 5th grade, we've seen that the transmissions are not happening in school. We had another case go out today. We've been having positive cases throughout this whole year. Positive cases are nothing new. The number of quarantines fluctuates a little bit, but the positive cases we always knew were going to happen. What's different is it being transmitted at school? And as of today, we still don't have evidence that we have an issue with Has there ever been transmission at school? Of course there has. But is it problematic? Is it spreading to the point where we have to close things down? No, I can say with confidence now, no. I don't know what would have happened if October 16th to January 18th, if we had been in person. I can't look back and say, I think that was a good decision. I can't look back and say we should have been in person because maybe it would have been worse. But we can say with what we're seeing in the hybrid window we've had since January 19th is we're not having transmission issues in schools. And then once again, now that you add the layer of, there's a lot of factors that have gone into this for every school district and every board of education. Now that we have shots in arms of all of our staff who chose to get a vaccination, and now that we have guidance that has changed as of last week, that we respond. We just keep responding to what the rules are, and we're going to keep pushing for safe in-person learning to the greatest extent possible while maintaining the remote option. We've never walked away from the remote option, and we've honored that, and we'll continue to do so throughout the end of the year. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, and then I mean, I know you said you were going to touch on it, but as far as the remote learners,
Mhm.
To kind of go back to our first parent, that had her public comment.
Mhm.
Can you explain a little bit? I was trying to follow, but I was a bit confused as to some of the topics that she was alluding to and mentioning. So what are what are we changing for the remote learners?
Well, I'm going to get to that, but
Okay,
not
then-
much. I would say
Okay.
that essentially we're not really changing anything. We had to adjust when their lunch pickup time was.
Okay,
Because of the junior high now serving lunch, we moved that to Ludwig. But I think the problem you might be asking about is when things are evolving and everybody's hearing a part of a plan or an idea, then I'm not in any way referring to the parent who spoke tonight. I'm referring to what I've seen happen day after day after day, and that is it's been really hard to talk about ideas and plans without people taking it all the way down and thinking, well, that's what's going to happen and getting upset about it. We have to talk about how to do this, and there's ideas that get left on the floor that aren't good ideas, and there's ideas that work and get better. And throughout the past year, it's been a tough year to talk about ideas in a way that doesn't upset people and misinformation doesn't get out. And in my ideal world, you get the right people in the room, meaning teachers, administrators, and ideally some parent voice, and you explore ideas and then you figure out what to implement. This year has been a tough year to do that kind of approach to problem solving. So people take a spin on something, they get part of a story, they mix it up and get wound up about something that isn't even a thing. There's a lot of misinformation. There's one thing I'd like to get rid of this year besides the pandemic, it's misinformation. But
okay,
does that help a little bit?
yes, yeah.
And that's why I'm taking the time with these charts to really help explain our thought
Right,
process
okay.
throughout the year.
Great, thank you.
But I would say minimal change to the,
Okay.
and that really comes from work with the union. We looked at a lot of different ideas and the union had some ideas and we agreed. That's what you're going to see tonight.
Okay.
So we asked the staff for some insights. We didn't get the number of responses that we love. We like to get well over 50%. So this is a caveat of being careful. And this is not just teachers. This is any D92 staff. We do comb through the data to make sure people don't repeat themselves. But with that, we had of the respondents, and there were only 43% response rate, 77% were comfortable returning to full in-person on April 6th. Okay. Parents, breakdown of the parents who had students at the different schools. We did have 580 responses out of 970 for parents. So that was well over 50%. And one question we asked was just kind of, once again, how would you describe the emotional well-being? And we do read the comments parents give and try to integrate that into some of our decision making. And you kind of expect that one, my child has experienced some mixed emotions, but is otherwise adjusting well. That's pretty optimistic, over half. And then we have some who have just responded differently. And we do have, our teachers are really keyed into the students who are struggling and putting the right supports in for those students as much as possible. It's tough doing it when you're not in person. Other parent question, the obvious one is their feelings about coming back. Are they comfortable? 81%, and the response rate was 60% of our parents. 81% said that yes, they feel comfortable having their son or daughter return to in-person learning on April 6th. And then we asked the other question about, this was for the early dismissal or late start. And so we looked at this as 54% said they wanted early dismissal, but you've got this key 22% that said we can do either. Whether you go one or the other, we're good to go. So when you take the flexible ones that had no preference with the ones who preferred early dismissal, 76% of our student parents said they prefer an early dismissal. We're only looking at a 40-minute. We asked them about a 60-minute late starter early dismissal. Since we asked the question, I found a way to only make that 40 minutes. So it's less of an impact. And I'm going to show that in a minute. Okay, so change. Let's talk about that. What's the same? Let's talk about what's the same. First of all, this has been the same all year. When you're eating, it's still 6 feet distant. There's been no change for that. A lot of our classrooms have had snacks. Students have been 6 feet apart. We're still encouraging students when they're eating, kind of like you take your mask off, you put a bite in, and you chew it with your mask on. We're going to be teaching that, especially during lunch. Masks still required. No change really there. Contact tracing, still doing it. We're still going to do the contact trace process and quarantine close contacts who are not vaccinated. And then remote learning. We're keeping remote learning for the rest of the school year for families who previously selected the option. What's changing? Symptom screening. So everybody loves the golden tickets, the daily self-certification, and the temperature checks. We survey our staff every single week asking about different safety metrics and how we're doing. We've always done really well with the safety metrics, but the feedback in writing that we always get is they don't feel like the temperature checks were as effective for getting good reads. The IDPH agrees and said it's almost worse if you're doing the symptom, not worse. They didn't say that, that's not fair. But it's not necessary and not productive to do the daily symptom screening where you're taking temperatures of students coming into the building and even collecting those self-certifications we know hasn't been as effective as we would have loved to have had it be. So the recommendation is you can do it if you want, but you can drop it. And we are choosing, I'm recommending that we drop that beginning Monday. So what we'll do if the board approves this plan is I'll send something out this week to parents. I'll have them list their students' names and just to verify that they are going to promise not to send their student to school with these symptoms. And that's it. That was an option we could have done from the beginning. We explored that back in the summer. We wanted to be a little bit more day-to-day with it. And at this point, we feel like the golden tickets aren't doing anything but just another paper to pass back and forth. Any questions about that change in symptom screenings? It's not that we're throwing caution to the wind by any stretch. It's just not effective and smarter decision with that. Physical distancing changed. Obviously, we've talked about that tonight, 3 to 6 feet. That was a game changer. Room capacity, another game changer. It used to be 50-person limit. So you think of Lockport's field house, 50 people limit. Never made sense to me. Why would 50 people be the same there as on a bus? That doesn't make sense. The bus 50-person limit has not changed, but everything else now, gymnasiums, field houses, cafeterias, it's how many 3 to 6 foot socially distanced people you can fit in that space. That makes sense. So that's a change. Adaptive pause. We've been following the guidance and man, I know 5th grade parents probably not getting birthday cards from you guys because we did, and I'm not making light of going on the adaptive pause for 5th grade. That was the only time we had to put that in place this year. And that was a tough one because we were following what the health department leadership set as a target for when too much is too much for quarantines, and that's 10% at a grade level or a school, and that was back from October. We've had that in place since the October shutdown, And we negotiated a plan to return in January with the union. This has been a part of it. And in going back and working with the union, we said, you know what, we think we can do this better. It just so happens that 5th grade adaptive pause was going on. At the same time, we were trying to undo all this, and we got the additional new guidance out. So the adaptive pause for 5th grade wraps up Thursday. And at the same time, we're looking to move forward with just a very targeted contact tracing process per the IDPH guidelines. We are going a little bit above and beyond, and that's what we've said we were doing all along. From day one, we said we're going to try to exceed from a safety standpoint. And 5th grade had a very interesting challenge that continued throughout the time. And I think it was the right thing to do, but I think we can do it better moving forward. Finally, symptoms. They did remove a couple symptoms. This will help with sending fewer students home. And it removes the runny noses and the stomach aches, which are very tough to decipher when you're at a 1st grade, for example. Or tummy aches are kind of a regular thing sometimes. So that will help tremendously with the number of quarantines we have.
Hey, Tim, real quick,
Yeah.
on the kind of piggybacking on number 1, do we still have the request/requirement for parents to self-report?
That's what this document is. So instead of doing it every day, oh, you mean if they're
Be it
positive?
online tool, right, if somebody calls
Yep,
or there's
100%. That's still part of the guidance and still part of the plan. We need that because we work in conjunction with the health department. We can usually contact trace faster than they can. And for our students in our schools, we want to be on top of that.
Yeah, I want to make sure that didn't go.
No, that's still 100% in effect and will remain until we're past this. That's a good point. Our nurses do a phenomenal job. Patty McGuire, our lead nurse, everybody helps, but Patty's really, man, all weekend, all night, she's working hard. Okay, so this is where the rubber meets the road. This is the change for in-person. If you look, this is the schedule we're recommending, not just for April and May, but going forward, period. That kindergarten through 8th grade have a 5-hour and 40-minute day, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Keeping in mind that the ISB requirement in Illinois, public schools have to provide 5 hours of instruction every day, period. So with that, we typically traditionally go over that. Forget about COVID for a second, but in non-COVID years, our typical school day provides 5 hours and 40 minutes of in-person instruction prior to COVID. We're recommending to continue that obviously going forward. And if you look at the times for Monday, you'll see the traditional Walsh Reed schedule, and then you'll see the Ludwig Oak Prairie traditional schedule. That carries over every day of the week except Wednesdays. With the parent input on early dismissal for Wednesdays, if you back that out 40 minutes for Walsh and Reed, that's a 250 dismissal. Oak Prairie and Ludwig, it's a 150 dismissal. Any questions about that so far? That's the only impact we're looking to make. It's not an hour, it's only 40 minutes. I want to be clear, our school day isn't 5 hours and 40 minutes, the amount of instruction within that. So I did note down below that lunch, recess, passing time at the junior high, things like that have to be deducted from that school day. So we still get a true 5-hour, 40-minute, or at minimum 5 hours of in-person instruction under this schedule. Any questions? Okay, and I do want to be clear, so for the pickup times, bus riders, car riders, walkers, you're going to have the same routine every day. It's just that on Wednesdays, it'll be 40 minutes earlier than the other 4 days a week. What's going to happen during early dismissal time, that 40 minutes in April and May of this year, that's the teacher co-planning time that we originally in the MOU from the beginning of the school year was 60 minutes per week of co-planning time. We're reducing that to 40 minutes per week because for the next bullet, that blends right into what we're going to do for the early dismissal times for PLCs next year. I'm not saying PLCs will be 40 minutes, but it's only going to impact the student day by 40 minutes. That's probably what everybody's wondering right here. So this is a good point for questions or clarifications. And we're looking to implement this with the new guidance April 6th. Everything past this is available to the public, but everything is, if you're curious about PLCs, all the rest of the slides following this are taken from a couple different PLC presentations. I'm not going to go through that because we did that last month at the board meeting.
Yeah, I just, can we go back to the previous? Okay, so, you had a slide of what's changing with in-person learning. I don't mean to bring this up again, but I just want to make sure, so remote, when the parent at the beginning of the meeting said, we don't need breaks from masks or, standing in line for buses and all of that. I guess I'm just trying to understand where that was coming from.
Yeah, that goes back. There was talk at one point about if you're going to a full day, it actually goes all the way back to 4 hours. Our hybrid consisted of 4 hours of in-person, 1 hour of asynchronous.
Okay.
For everybody.
Okay.
And so then when we transitioned and back on February 25th, I started talking about plans to return on April 6th and add that hour. So 5 hours of in-person. That started the conversation around, well, how does that impact remote? Are they 5 hours?
Okay.
And so before we could finalize that, the guidance changed on us. And all of a sudden we're talking about full day for everybody. Then the natural question in a very busy week is, does that mean remote is going to be full day? Now, there's a lot of misinformation out there. I want to be clear. I've been on the record since last summer that, and it hasn't changed. Humans can't be on screens as much as we're talking about. I mean, you've got to have screen breaks during this, especially our kindergartners, the youngest students, 8th graders, there's got to be some breaks in there. So we've never advocated for the entire time being on the screen. It's never happened. But you can see how if it's a fluid process and there's discussions, that can get turned around pretty quickly too. They're trying to make us do this. That's never been the case. The 5 hours, I would never advocate for 4 hours in a row of screen time. We've always tried to explain that no matter who's doing it, you do a lesson, give the kids a break, let them go work on a worksheet, let them do some writing or some reading without a screen and then come back. Now that's really easy for me to say. Not very easy to get a kindergartner to do something, take a break, and then come back at the same time. So I'm simplifying a very challenging thing that our teachers have dealt with this year. Not much easier sometimes to get our 8th graders back after a break like that. But that's the kind of stuff that when people talk about change, this has been our first time doing this year. And it's been a learning process for every parent, every student, every teacher, and every administrator, period. As we showed in the slides earlier, we've tried to always follow the data. We've tried to go slow. And the more we work together and the less we just start assuming things and then yelling about it, that helps us. But like we've seen, it's our political culture right now. Everybody wants to yell about stuff. Our district has done a great job slowing down, talking, and really trying to stay centered on the facts. But when it goes wrong, it's because things spun too quickly. We didn't take a chance to slow down.
Okay. Thank you.
So as far as specific changes to the remote learning model, they're not really listed here. In the other document, the actual plan that the board is approving tonight, it does reference that schedule more. And we didn't really make a change based on meeting with the union. That's actually in the return to school plan. That's an action item.
Right, and that's why I just, in listening to the parent, I was confused at some of, the information that was being conveyed because I didn't think that there was going to be a change. Okay, and I just want to make sure going forward that I understand it correctly.
Certainly, they're not that parent's fault at all. There's just a lot of inaccurate information. Everybody fills in the blanks that shouldn't be filled in. I'm not saying that parent did. We all do. It's just got to slow down and listen.
To the point of clarification, because I think it was a little confusing as you were explaining everything. The 40 minutes of time that is going in for the remainder of this year is really just common planning time for our staff. We aren't implementing the full PLC model until the start of next school year. That's what it said at the bottom of the chart.
Yeah.
It kind of sounded like PLC time. I think we're starting to call it that, but it's not really full implementation of PLCs.
It's another great example of some of our staff, because they're excited about PLC, start referring it to that. And we may have some teams because we're starting some training, but we're not really, we're starting to trainer models with a group of teachers as of this week. But it's not designed to be PLC time. This is to stay true to common planning time that we negotiated into the schedule last summer with 60 minutes. We just thought this was the time to match that up. But I'm patient with that because I totally understand why someone would say, well, it sounds like you're starting PLCs now. That's an easy thing to get confused by, but we're not. We're not ready. We've got a lot more training to do, and we're going to go slow to go fast with those next year.
Dr. Arnold, there is a question, it looks like, from a parent. It says,
Let me stop sharing. I can't.
They were asking if Oak Prairie is going to be every day, just clarifying that K through 8, all schools every day.
Yeah, this chart is accurate.
I had one question, probably the uncomfortable question that,
Sure.
Just because I'm always kind of planning for the future. So we've looked at all the graphs, everything's going in the right direction. Yeah, we were talking 2 weeks ago, it's been a little bit of a different story. If we start to see this again, I'm not asking you for a number that's a cutoff, but what we've seen, what we've learned before is the more we can plan ahead, the more time we give parents, the better, teachers, everybody. That's always helpful. How do we prepare ourselves for a potential? Obviously, it doesn't happen, but if we start to see the upswing, we start to see numbers go south.
Yep.
Or north in this case. How do we pull that trigger?
Same way we've been doing it. So we've taken away that metric of the 10%. So that's a nice, easy safety net. That kind of takes the hard work out of it. It's like when we get to that, make a decision and go. We've made it a little bit harder on ourselves from a decision-making standpoint because now we're just targeting. Am I going to still look at the percentage of students at a grade level that are quarantined? Of course. If we see more of the school-based transmission, that's what I'm looking more for. If I start seeing student after student transmitting in our schools and we can trace it back to that, that's a problem. But like I said, the most recent one we just had, we know the student contact. Some of these kids that we count for our positive cases, they're on full remote. They haven't been in the school all year, but they're still our students that we're still tracking and counting because we also know they have a chance to have contact with our other students in the neighborhood and things like that. So we have to look at that level of each situation. Is this positive student who had contacts, is he or she even an in-person learner or are they full remote? We've had that. And so we have to make every number doesn't count the same way when you're trying to decide whether or not you should go on adaptive pause. You wouldn't want to go on adaptive pause because you have a lot of your remote learners who are positive because everybody else is in school.
And again,
it's complex, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And we can do this by the student, by the grade level, by the building, right? If whatever Ludwig starts to see an outbreak, it doesn't necessarily impact the Prairie.
We made that commitment back when we came back in January that we were not going to treat the whole district the same. We were going to be very targeted. That's the big change we're seeing. That if 5th grade happened again next week, we would take a much more targeted approach, which is different than we've been doing it all year. It's been 10% adaptive pause because we were really trying to be proactive. We didn't want to see that transmission, and it hasn't. That's a good question. Any other questions?
There's still questions coming up with this remote student hours. So I don't know if this is a good time to answer that.
How about if I come to it in the document when we get there?
Great.
Pull that
Okay.
up. I can. I don't want to. Sure that what I'm saying is matching that. Because we have them back and forth, and those remote teachers do have hands down the most flexibility. We've told them you've got a lot of flexibility in how you design your time. We have a remote teacher on the negotiations and tried to honor that. What they agreed to was 8:50 to 2:30, 5 hours of instruction within that window for grades K-3. Kindergarten is unchanged, only 2.5 hours, and that came from Bisbee. Grades 4 through 5, 7:50 to 1:30. And then obviously 6, 7, and 8 have always followed that regular full day schedule for the remote, or they will. So 8:50 to 2:30, but in that time, you've got a big break because those remote students take a break for lunch, and a lot of them do drive, pick up the lunch at school, and then go back home. So they kind of eat too. So that's what we trust the teachers to kind of work out that schedule with their parents, and what works for them is what they do. So we've given them that window. It is in the return to school safety plan that's being voted on tonight.
Okay. Great. Thanks for clarifying.
Sure. And I think some of those questions, just once the board approves this tonight, those teachers will have that information to share with parents and say, here's your schedule. We are guessing, I think our schools are, the junior high is pretty set on what their schedule will look like. We've had to do some rearranging at K-5. Those principals have been working with the teachers. They're pretty close to having a set schedule ready to go. Now that the beginning and ending times are not the issue. It's when does art and music and PE happen in this afternoon time. And so principals are going back and forth, working with teams of teachers to make sure that's kind of all fitting together. Because when you add in the related services, the interventionists, the special education, there's a lot of moving parts there that we don't want to shortchange any of that for student services.
I think we should just reassure parents that as the information, as things come out, we will continue to communicate effectively, efficiently, and completely so that they are very clear on everything that's going on. You know, there's some urgency as of right now that, you know, this plan is changing, but nothing is happening immediately. This would be going into effect April 6th.
Yep.
So, you know, I just want to make sure there's a lot of questions coming in. We understand that, but we will be communicating answers to all those questions as it goes.
Yeah, it's not a significant change in the length of the remote student day. And you can see that it is shorter than, the in-person day. And once the board approves this, the teachers, you know, remote teachers will have they'll be somewhat tied to what the building principal sets for some of their specials, but they will have more flexibility. All the other in-person teachers are going to be driven by what they set as a building for when art, music, PE, where they fall. It matters more for remote, like when was the last time our in-person parents really knew or had a strong need to know what time art, music, and PE was. I mean, that, you know, when you send them to school, it doesn't really matter. The difference is with remote learning, those parents they're much more involved than any parent ever has been in the history of education, because the student isn't in school, they're in their house learning. And we really rely on those parents to be those partners with them. So they need to know more information than they have in the past. And that'll come from the teachers primarily, remote teachers. Good questions. What else? Am I sharing still?
Yeah, no, Dr. Arnold, thanks for, clarifying. I think that was a good discussion.
That's all I have for my report.
Okay. No, Assistant Superintendent for Business Services.
All right, good evening. Thank you. 3 items to update the board on tonight. Wanted to start with an update on construction for the summer. Later on in the agenda, you'll see the bid specs that have come in for the summer construction. Bid tabulation is included along with the recommendation. Another project that's been going on that I've updated the board on from time to time is the hourly rates. Increased group that we're working with, the minimum wage impact that we're facing. So I've brought a group together that's composed of our handbook committee. So it's a smaller subset of that group. And we've been meeting several times to talk about not only the minimum wage, but compensation in general and get a sense of where people are at. We've shared a lot of information comparing us to other districts, trying to level set just position for position. So that's been a great discussions that we've had around where do we fit? How are we from a competitive standpoint with other districts? So it's been a great group. Obviously, the whole effort with that is to have a recommendation that's built into the budget for FY22 that the board can consider at that point in time. So the entire committee knows that that's what we're working towards, and they've been a great part of that effort. The last thing that I wanted to update the board on, I had mentioned last month that I was going to be bringing a TRS supplemental savings plan to the board this evening for sign off. The recommendation that we're getting at this point is to hold off on that. So I'll probably be bringing that either next month or the month after. We're waiting on some more explanation from our attorney, just exactly what the impact of the changes are going to be to that. But again, TRS was mandated by law to offer a new savings plan, a 457B retirement plan as another option. So employees obviously would have the choice, those who are in TRS, to participate if they would like, but the board has to approve that plan first. So I would probably be bringing that forward as long as we get the go ahead next month or the month after. Thank you.
Thank you. Director of Student Services.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, sorry, but I meant to hit my slide, sorry. You'll see in our board agenda, actually, a lot of what I'm going to say this evening is similar to what Ms. McCluskey is going to say. We're working in conjunction on our summer program. So Summer Win historically has been extended school year for our IEP population and only for students with IEP services. This summer, you'll see the dates. We're going to have 3 weeks in June for all students that are identified as needing it. So the IEP students, as well as some at-risk students due to this COVID slide or gap that we're experiencing. And then in August, our IEP students will come back again for an additional 2 weeks. So it'll be a nice end of summer and start of summer that we're going to have there. So you'll see that. After spring break, we'll be started hiring staff. So we will need a supervisor, an administrator on site, as well as gen ed teachers, special ed teachers, some related service staff, obviously paraprofessionals, and getting those in place. We had about 58 respondents in district who want to work. So we feel like we will have enough D92 employees, maybe non-cert. We might have to go outside of that window, but we should know more by the April board meeting, kind of where we're at. And then we're looking at when staff are hired right now, we're asking building principals to give us numbers for how many students we're looking at, 10% give or take. We don't have hard numbers on that yet. And then for special ed, the numbers will be higher. We've opened it up more, making sure those kids are getting services this summer a little different than in the past. And the requirements for summer school has changed from special ed law as well. Then we had some parapro training on March 1st. It's always great to get together with that group of staff. Obviously, we have some time during Institute days to do that. So we did a morning session where they got to hear more about PLCs and their role in that and SEL for next year. And then in the afternoon, we were talking about how we're focusing on independence in students, fading prompts, and independence on staff. So they were pretty excited about that and had some resources to take away. And then we did roll out with your approval last month, our Ed Plan Connect. It has not been the smoothest rollout technology that we've done, but I think parents are starting to understand it now. It's very, I don't know the tech term, Greg or Matt, you can share, but it is very HIPAA secure. So it's similar to a banking app. So parents get an alert. It goes out at midnight every night. Bobby's IEP was finalized today. Please log on to your account. They get an alert to get a text or an email. They can decide, do they want a text alert or do they want an email? They get a code and then they can log on and see their documents. The nice thing is they can sign for consent, they can sign for evaluations, and then they would have access to view all their students' documents. So it is a nice feature, but it's a big change for our parents. So we've been doing a lot of training with that. Staff are liking it. It's just another new thing this year. So happy to answer questions if you have any.
I have a question, but I think maybe Jamie,
Sure.
first, because I think it'll.
They kind of go together. Sure.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question, Nora? Just in general, how are
our case studies, evaluations, are we seeing a drop? Just speaking from high school.
Yeah.
Because of the current situation.
I guess with me being new this year, I guess the number is high or low. I guess I think we've been a little bit more stringent and giving a little more grace to students before we're opening new case studies, because we feel like, is it truly a disability, or is it that they've lost instruction during this COVID? So we've really tried to up the interventions and look at if it's a fluency issue, if it's comprehension. So we've been a little bit more stringent about opening a case study and being a little bit more direct with our interventions. So I don't think we've done more than in past years. It's probably a little lower, especially at the K-3 level, I would say for sure. Like at this point last year, we would have done, or pre-COVID, not last year, we would have done more evaluations K1, 2. But I think we're really trying to get in and see, is it because we're on Zoom? Is it because they didn't get instruction? We want to roll that out before we label it a disability.
Cool. Thank you.
So we're being stringent there.
All right, Director of Curriculum.
All right, good evening. I wanted to share with you our March 1st District-wide Teacher Institute Day was very successful. We had a great turnout with teachers, professionals, and instructional aides. The focus of the day was our professional learning communities, as we've been talking about, and also our SEL. Dr. Mark Van Clay from the Consortium for Educational Change was our presenter that day. He did an awesome job getting the staff involved. And he did a nice overview on PLC key terms and strategies. And he's going to be working with our PLC steering committee as we go forward to implement and develop a model PLC plan here in the district. And we've already had our first session with him this week, and it went very well. And most teachers that have been part of the strategic planning committee have worked with him on writing that strategic plan. So that's a positive. And also on March 1st, Dr. Arnold continued on with our day with our social emotional learning, and our concentration was on self-management. And that came from a survey from our January Teacher Institute Day on the teachers' needs. And we did on building needs and individual needs, and self-management to be a popular thing. So Dr. Arnold did a presentation on that with strategies and activities. And it was all interactive, and it all goes back to our CASEL core competencies. So that was a great day, and it was well received. And then Mrs. Stinkos and I are working on our summer WIN program. And as she's already talked about, we will be selecting those students with the recommendation of principals and teachers in April. And then based on that, we'll be hiring staff from there. And we will be hiring a summer site principal who will help us with that as well. And
Is
I know
that
you had a
different than you as the administrator?
We both will be.
We'll have one administrator that'll oversee everything.
Okay,
They'll be working with us directly.
but that won't be the principal,
It will be a summer principal.
plus you two.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, no, we were originally, we thought we could do it, and then we remembered we have our jobs to do. So,
That's, thank you.
and Dr. Arnold approved that.
I
Made it out to us.
We want this to go well. This is more than we've ever done before,
Yeah.
so we want a day-to-day person there. And we do see the benefit of building that administrative capacity. To teacher in the district who has her type 75 and getting it.
Right, sorry. That wasn't negative.
No,
I-
absolutely.
Not at all.
Trying to understand who
Yeah.
was doing what
Right.
role. It was
Right.
not
Right.
negative, and yeah, that's great to have somebody else get a dry run and, be being a principal without so many of the other.
Yeah, I don't think we have enough students to justify more than one. That's why
Right,
we're trying to do everything in conjunction, that it's one program for the whole district. We're not piecing out, this is special, this is general.
Right.
Yes, okay, so I mean, I'm sure there was a lot behind the scenes on this. I think it's a great idea. One thing I know as a parent, I have thought about, and I probably share it with, all of us in here. So our general, our average students, or ones that don't qualify for the extended, school year. Not that you haven't had anything else on your plate, but kind of going forward, will there be discussions, from an administration level, like how does next school year look as far as, I think, the curriculum, I mean, do we have to beef that up a bit? I mean, and that's not the right words, but You know, I mean, I think we all share, you know, that, I mean, our teachers have done an amazing, you know, job given what was laid, you know, on their laps. But, you know, I know that, you know, curriculum has been streamlined, you know, so how do we, how do, you know, how do we catch up? Or, you
Okay.
know, do we have?
No,
some
those are very
discussions?
good questions. The guidance from ISB is, so for summer learning, they're recommending that we accelerate, not meaning to go faster, but continue with grade level materials. So we could fill in those gaps as we go along. And then also in our May Teacher Institute Day, we will be having teachers share with each other and do some vertical articulation. So they will be looking at their priority standards and identifying where they left off for the school year, ensuring that with the next grade level. So teachers will have an idea of where those students are when they enter their classroom in the fall. So does that help with your? Okay.
One thing we've talked about administratively, we haven't gone far with this, and that is, so now that we're adding a new component of summer school for Gen Ed, now what would that need be, to your point, Doreen, for tutoring next year, after school tutoring? So it's something else that we're looking at. There's about 4 different options we can look to put that in place. We need to get summer school running, and then we have the beginnings of plan for what tutoring could look like next year.
Okay.
And once again, these are things that I will continue to find the positives to come out of COVID, and things like, you know, we could have been tutoring all along. We could have been doing Gen Ed summer school all along. So although we feel like we really need to now because of the pandemic, these are the things that we want to do well and continue to make a part of how we do it.
Right. Good. Okay, great.
And
Thank
then
you.
being our first year with the regular,
What-
being
sorry.
with the first year with the regular summer school, we'll make improvements upon it and learn from it as we go
Sure.
forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I
Okay,
think just
great. Thank you.
the other difference is we're really focused in on reading and math. That's
Yeah.
the primary focus for summer this year. It's been a little different. So,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Director of Technology.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I just have a handful of brief updates, just more so to make sure the board understands that these are still on our radar and we're still working towards getting these initiatives complete. First off, Technology Task Force. I've spent some time in additional meetings with administration and talking with some outside vendors in the effort to put together a plan. I am anticipating most likely the April board meeting to have a more substantive update there. SOPA, we did have our first communication with staff on March 10th. That included a brief explanation of SOPA, how it will impact our not only our teaching staff, but all our staff, and then set some preliminary time milestones and a timeline. We've also begun our app review. I think at previous board meetings, I've mentioned that we're in the process of reviewing about over 1,000 applications, and so we started that process, and that will probably continue well into April. And then lastly, again, just to keep this on your radar, we do anticipate another phishing test coming up, and that is currently being planned. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you guys have any.
All right, thank you. All right, the consent agenda. These are regular items that the board moves on in one motion. This month, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve items 1 through 8 under the consent agenda, removing item number 2, the treasurer's report. We will not be approving that this month. There's a typo in it essentially, and we need to make sure it's right before approving it. It will not affect monthly expenditures, which is a separate item. Monthly expenditures is way more important to approve every month. That's what gets bills paid and payroll done. So So it's a minor change, and we will look at, review it, fix it, and bring it back next month. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items numbers 1 through 8, or removing item number 2?
I'll make the motion.
Motion.
Grant and Tim? Okay. Roll call, please.
Middleton.
Yes.
Gurecki.
Yes.
Houlihan.
Yes.
Adamchuk. He's muted.
You're on mute, Tim.
Yes.
Thank you. Twice.
Yes.
Percola.
Yes.
Dusterhoff.
Yes, motion carries. All right, I need a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with the teachers union for the learning models.
I'll make it Middleton.
I'll second.
All right, we've read it. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Twice.
Yes.
Percola.
Yes.
Adamchuk.
Yes.
Middleton.
Yes.
Houlihan.
Yes.
Gurecki.
Yes.
Dusterhoff.
Yes, motion carries. I need a motion to approve the full day in-person learning and modifications to the District 92 return to school safety plan.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any further questions or discussion?
I did have one question. Just point of clarification. I saw it pop up a couple of times and I'm not aware. We are not having students who are currently full remote move to full in-person if they were to express that they want to do that, or we are?
So throughout the year, principals have dealt with that on a case-by-case basis. So that's happened. I bet every few weeks, a principal calls me with a request from a parent to move from one model to the other. And we've always honored that if there's a seat to be had. And so we'll keep doing that.
So parents should work with their building principal to make that request.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Tim, the one thing just kind of popped in my head, I've seen this reiterated, I think in our documentation at PH, is we would always favor in-class learning over extracurriculars. I didn't hear anything about taking away any extracurriculars. Do you think there'd be an impact on that? Would we hold off on doing anything because we're in person, or do you see no impact?
We implemented the junior high extracurriculars before being able to get to this point because it didn't affect the vaccinated pieces of the puzzle. But no, we don't have any plans to do anything different. We're really, seeing those as a little bit of a separate issue. I don't anticipate any problem with that. We'll follow the numbers. If things get real, we've had volleyball going on, we've had girls basketball or boys basketball going on. Things are stable. We haven't seen anything flare up, and we've also used the high school as a model. The high school has given us many examples of the different sports they did even last fall and what's been going on last summer, and we're seeing that as a safe thing.
And what do we have coming up for the spring baseball?
Boys volleyball is coming up. It hasn't started already. I think they had tryouts yesterday. I'd have to think about what the other ones are that are coming up, but they're rolling out.
Okay.
Are we adjusting our attendance protocols at all?
Tell me what you mean by attendance protocol.
So, I mean, the IDPH guideline was the 50 people within a certain space. Are we looking at expanding
spectators
that?
and things like that?
Yes.
We're going to keep following the guidance as it evolves. The reason I'm hesitating to say too much about that is, all the hints we got dropped today, everybody heard it. I mean, we don't know what's going to be announced tomorrow, literally, for phase 5. So
Sure.
We're talking about what would graduation look like. We've got some tentative plans into the current reality. We know that this is March, mid-March. By the time we get to the end of May, who knows where we'll be. But we keep making plan A, B, and C and see which one we pull from.
Thank you.
Sure. Roll call, please.
Gurecki.
Yes.
Adamchuk.
Yes.
Twice.
Yes.
Middleton.
Yes.
Houlihan.
Yes.
Percola.
Yes.
Dusterhoff.
Yes, Motion carries. I need a motion to approve the annual school calendar for next year, 21-22.
I'll make the,
Yeah. Yes.
Doesn't say hybrid or remote anywhere on it, does it?
So for this, just to note that by approving the current calendar under the consent agenda, we did set the last day of school for this year is June 4th, Friday, June 4th. That was for the previous calendar. Now for approving this for next year, it did work out where we, without snow days, we will be, or emergency days, we will be looking at a dismissal or end of school year prior to Memorial Day weekend. And that's probably the next big task we have. We do that in conjunction with the union. We'll have to have some public hearings. But the next thing we'll be talking about is e-learning and how those e-learning days roll in, which would impact whether or not we use emergency days for any future snow days. So that'll be happening. I would think, let's get past the next few months. Summer, next fall, we'll start that process to have it in place for next winter.
Excellent.
So does that move the start of school then up quite a bit, right?
No, that's a parallel date to this year. Well, this year, nothing was parallel,
yeah.
but it's our typical start a few days past when the high school starts.
Which is actually, it's closer to the start of the high school than it has been in the past. It's been a week it's been 5 to 7 school days off in the past. So we are closer to the start of the high school, which I know helps families who use older children as babysitting and just caring for their siblings.
yeah, the first student day is the 18th of August. So it's pretty close to what we were 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, the first student day, the way I look at it here, isn't until the 20th. Well, I'm sorry, this is the 2021. Never mind. Look at the wrong thing.
And to clarify, just to be clear to the public, to what Jake said, this is just the calendar. This is just the days we're coming to school. We're not doing anything else than setting when spring break and Christmas break is our winter break are. Okay.
The other thing I would note about this calendar is there are no school improvement days. So
Oh, yeah.
if everybody remembers, about once a month, we would have a half day early release. So that's about 3 hours. What we've done instead is that's the 40 minutes on Wednesdays every week. That turns into 60 minutes of that time. So
yeah,
we will not have in this calendar any school improvement days, those type of
Like
early
early
days.
dismissal or.
I hate, it's confusing to talk about those two terms. We'll continue the schedule of 40 minutes every Wednesday as an early dismissal,
Right.
but no more of the early release days. That was a half day school improvement day. That's the trade-off.
yeah. Okay. Okay. Roll call.
Adamchuk,
Yes.
Sweiss,
Yes.
Pergola,
Yes.
Gurecki,
Yes.
Middleton.
Yes.
Houlihan,
Yes.
Duster.
Yes, motion carries. So you can start planning your vacations now that we have that in place. Revisions to the grading scale. I need a motion to approve the revisions of the grading scale of Oak Prairie.
I'll make,
Any questions? We talked about it last month.
It went well. Things worked well.
Yeah,
and
it's
I
going
think
very
they
well. You want to
move forward
proceed.
with it.
Yeah.
Okay,
They're having a lot of success.
great. Roll call?
Sweiss,
Yes.
Houlihan,
Yes.
Gurecki,
Yes.
Middleton.
Yes.
Pergola,
Yes.
Adamchuk,
Yes.
Duster.
Yes, motion carries. I need a motion to approve the bids for the interior doors at Walsh School.
I'll make it.
I'll second.
Sweiss and
Middleton.
thank you.
Any,
So really not much of an update. This is the same kind of work that we did last year at Reed. We're using the same model, so there'll be wood doors. Hoping to pretty much repeat exactly what we did there from a security standpoint. So looking forward to get that school finished as well.
They'll have by security interior locking and stuff.
Correct.
Some locks. and
It's
no
the
more.
same sort of mortise lock that we did at Reed, so it'll be, from a secure standpoint, yep, teachers will be able to tell from the inside, locked or unlocked, and that's just better for us. Yep.
Yeah, won't have to search for keys to lock it if they need
Correct.
to. Okay, great. Roll call, please.
Houlihan,
Yes.
Pergola,
Yes.
Correcki,
Yes.
Adamchuk,
Yes.
Middleton.
Yes.
Sweiss,
Yes.
Dusterhoff.
Yes, motion carries. Need a motion to approve the summer school administrator job description and pay rates.
I'll make it.
I'll second.
Any follow-up on that?
No, that's what we talked about earlier.
Roll call, please.
Correcki,
Yes.
Pergola,
Yes.
Houlihan,
Yes.
Adamchuk,
Yes.
Sweiss,
Yes.
Middleton.
Yes.
Dusterhoff.
Yes, motion carries. Number Sitco agreement, we don't have that tabled, so it's tabled for
I don't know
now.
what we're gonna do if we ever approve that.
Yeah. Someday. Sorry, board policy update, review first reading.
Policy committee reviewed these and they're there for your benefit. We'll bring them back. There is an error in the date. It says April 13th at the bottom of each policy. I'll correct that. It's April 20th is our next board meeting. Nothing outstanding in any of the policy updates.
Okay. No old business, any new business?
No, I'm just seeing comments. So Mrs. Forecast, I think in regards to the sports, it was girls basketball and track and field. That will be
Is boys
up and coming.
and okay,
And you said
Boys
boys
volleyball.
volleyball, right?
excellent. Okay. New business. Okay. We don't have closed session this month. Nothing has changed with the items we talked about last month. Waiting on a few final details to work that out, but there's nothing to truly update or discuss in there. And the other part is the famous number 7. Okay, so I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make it.
Second, Middleton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.